All right. I am thrilled to have David Nikzad join us today on non-consensus investing. David and I met in Dubai about a month ago at a Satoshi Roundtable conference. And, David's really got an incredible background. He started as a club and rave promoter in DC. And that's where he learned how to spend $1 to make $10 and really create great experiences for guests. And then he went to Silicon Valley, where he became a VC at Y Combinator, invested in a number of unicorns, including Airbnb. And today, he's the founder of a venture firm. We'll learn more about that. That's investing in pharmaceutical products, including using naturally grown psychedelics to treat mental health concerns. So we got so much to talk about here, from what does investing have to do with surfing? He's got a framework I find really quite interesting. We'll talk about AI, crypto, his experience with Sam Altman, psychedelics, venture capital, the state of venture, longevity and wellness, and also his story too. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. Dave, first off, thanks for joining us. I know you're in where are you today? Where in the world are you, first of all?
I am actually still in Dubai
Okay.
and on our way to Thailand tomorrow. And I think there's an excitement in the air with the whole crypto bull run,
Right.
yeah, as I said to you earlier, there's a convergence of a lot of things that we've worked on for, I would say, over a decade, maybe 14, 15 years that are, I think, just coming together simultaneously, just because I always say you got to plant the seeds and then sort of, they start growing. And I think a lot of people forget as fast as crypto is, many of these things that are now blooming are 10 to 15 years old.
That's right. It's the 15-year overnight success story. You don't see the hard grit, especially like your investment in Airbnb, classic example. They had to raise revenue by selling, branded cereal at political conventions. And now you got a massive public company. So let's zoom out for a second and talk
Yeah.
about surfing and investing. What's the connection?
It's interesting. I was actually chatting with a gentleman this morning that's a former SoftBank individual or former SoftBank investor living in Dubai, and we were talking about the ebbs and flows of life. And, similar to the waves, the waves come in and out. It's high tide, low tide. And then, sometimes the waves are big, sometimes they're small, but there's a rhythm to all of it. And I think that because I started investing very early, probably 27, 28 years ago, I don't really get too emotional about what I would call when the waves are consolidated or there are no waves. I mean, there are days that we paddle out and it's just talking story on our surfboards and we're catching little waves. But I think at the end of the day, you have to have your equipment ready for when the waves are big. And I think that for all of us that have been in psychedelics or crowdfunding or crypto or space or deep tech, uh, there was definitely a consolidation the last 2 years. Yes, did OpenAI and machine learning do well and robotics did well? Yeah, there were certain sectors that did really well, but it was the element of knowing that we invested in founders and companies that this was a longitudinal journey. And as you'll find out when you surf, uh, over the decades, obviously you become better. You understand the channels, the way you paddle out into the big surf, and it's very, very similar to investing.
I fully agree. Like if you're looking at a secular trend and you're anticipating one, that's another way of saying we're waiting for the big waves. We're gonna ride the wave. Uh,
We are big wave riding right now in what I would say the token and Bitcoin. I mean, listen, we always say in Hawaii the third wave it's always the one. It's the bigger one. It's coming through. It's not doubled up. And I would say if you look at, let's just call it the ICO or IDO market, we're in the third wave. And I think that everybody has brought their guns, as we would call it in surfing. They brought their boards. They've been working on these boards, and now they're ready to launch. And yeah, that's the
I love
similarities when it comes to surfing.
I love the third wave metaphor too. We should double click briefly on that. I see this across asset classes. You see it, for example, in biotech. You had Craig Venter in the 2000s. He had a big bubble there, didn't go anywhere. The hype exceeded the substance. And he had another biotech boom 5 years ago. Now with the third wave in biotech. In real estate, the same thing happens too. So the first person who acquires a property in multifamily or CRE, they overbid, they have aggressive rent roll assumptions, aggressive financing costs. They get the wrong financing. Then the second one, they put too much capex in, they blow out. And then the third person, these are just kind of rules of thumb. I'm not saying all deals are like this, but it's just an interesting way to think about markets and investing. The third person, they get in there, they get it below replacement cost, they get the right fixed term rate financing, and it works out. So today you're seeing a convergence of a number of these waves, and you touched on quite a few of them, from deep tech to SpaceX to crypto to AI. How do you, to psychedelics, what are the waves that you're most excited about today?
I mean, I'm excited about all of it. I think at the end of the day, I don't like to get into this specific, what I would call metric, but we're going to talk about it because I think it makes a lot of sense. Right now in the United States, you're noticing that 30 to 40% of people that live in the US don't believe in religion. I think looking at that at a global level, this idea of religion, which is essentially a community, we've all shifted what is our own religion. And I don't like to use this in what I would call an occult type narrative, but the people, we're living in a world today where there's so much access to information that as long as you follow the letter of the law, you're going to find those people that are part of your tribe or your community. And I think that the idea of liquidity through crypto, and the idea of SPVs and crowdfunding and IDOs, everything has just shifted where you now have these Telegram groups and Discord channels, and you find your tribe. Like I'm part of this Telegram channel, which is what I would say like 200 crypto OGs, and we essentially are all into the same thing. We all like longevity products like NAD. We like psychedelics. We like cannabis. We love crypto. So in general, to use that word religion, what we're finding now with a lot of people is this idea of religion is coming into like, what turns you on, what is it, who do you want to spend time with day to day? And again, I don't want to get into your personal business, but I'm sure it's like that with the people you hang out with.
No question about it. You're absolutely right. Look, ESG was a religion. That's a tribalism. Yes. Elon Musk runs his church of Tesla and OpenAI, and there are religions and tribes. They're all bubbles of different kinds.
You mean closed AI?
Closed AI, yes. We're going to get back to that too. We got so many exciting topics to get through here. No, I agree. Look, memes are shared beliefs and shared values, and we confer some legitimacy to that based on a group, because you and I say this is worth something, and sometimes it's in a monetary form, sometimes an aesthetic form, sometimes it's in an immaterial form. And I agree on the NAD too, and there are interesting overlaps between these tribes. Let's talk about crypto. Let's go there now. Look, we've got all-time highs in Bitcoin. Now, what's notable is that it took place before the halving. That hasn't happened before. And we're also seeing this similar phenomenon, I'd argue, in equity markets, where you had relatively short 6-7 month bear market, and then 12, 15 months, you're at all-time highs again. And part of this is you have a number of narratives. One of the narratives is certainly the AI narrative. And where do you see where we are in crypto relative to the cycle? And what is the acceleration of crypto and the recovery of crypto this quickly to all-time highs ahead of the halving?
It was going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, one thing that drives me a little bit crazy about, getting on something like X is all the people that, get into what I would call subjective, fear-based conversation. Anybody, everybody knew that with the people that were involved with the ETF, it was going to happen. So I think at the end of the day, if you didn't ride that cycle or narrative into where the price is today, you obviously have no business being in the space. And I don't say that in any bad way, but it's similar to surfing. You don't arrive in Hawaii and decide you're going to paddle out in a place that's breaking 3 feet with a reef and it's like head high. You're gonna get killed. So at the end of the day, everything that happened, even with the SEC, the fake tweet with the SEC where people got wiped out, that was all part of what I would call this, like, the matrix, or this sort of pixelated journey. I look at everything, from the lens of like quantum physics and quantum chemistry, uh, and especially when you take psychedelics and in pathogens, you're going to see those atomic, sort of like very nanoparticles of what's going on. So yes, if you were running 10x leverage or 100x leverage, you were going to get knocked out of the game. So I think at the end of the day, uh, individuals or people that had experience, that had surfed these waves before, understood what was going to happen. And I think the beautiful part about the UAE is it was prepared for that. When we were sitting at Satoshi, you could feel the momentum happening.
Right.
And I think at this point, when I get into subjective conversations with people on Twitter, I'll do Twitter Spaces. Listen, Bitcoin's going to hit $100 and some $1,000. It might even hit a multi-$100,000 price level, but that's where we are in the market. I always like to go back to the story of Tesla. Tesla originally was an RTO. It started trading at around $1. So at the end of the day, that was a longitudinal journey for Tesla to where it is today. It's also a conglomerate of companies. That's where Bitcoin and what I would say the sub layers of crypto are today. The conversations that I have today with people are banking rails, on ramps, off ramps globally. There are people that I meet every day that live their life without a bank account. They are using crypto for everyday expenses, and they live in that digital world. So when you're at a level today where you see at some point Bitcoin is going to have a $2 trillion market cap on its own, that price is going to compound. And that's just where we are at now. We're hitting what I would call critical mass.
What do you make of the fact that we hit all-time highs before the halvening? And similarly, in equity markets, we're seeing acceleration. Credit spreads are tight wherever you look. Full valuation or 21 PE ratio, et cetera.
Again, I don't want to age you and I would say, number one, you're a lot smarter than I am. I saw that at Satoshi.
Not really.
I would say you knew, if there were very sophisticated individuals building out these ETFs, and the people that were involved with them, like Mike Novogratz and BlackRock and
Right.
Kathy, these people have analysts and people that are studying these products and saying to themselves, okay, this is when they need to launch, and this is what needs to happen at that time. So at the end of the day, anybody that's been in the crypto space knows that when a halving happens, the price is going to double to where it is now. So if by the time we are at the halving, and number one, we are also, full disclosure, launching a Bitcoin token ourselves, we know that there are a number of companies that are going to be launching taproot products around the halving. So all of a sudden you have these L2s and L3s that are launching, and this whole idea of derivatizing Bitcoin into this much bigger product where people can actually use their Bitcoin creates liquidity. So candidly, this idea of $150,000, $200,000 Bitcoin, it's not out of the question. I've actually internally, between the people that, we have in our, what I would say, tribe, the number we're looking at is basically a $250,000 number. Do we understand that there will be a consolidation? Absolutely. There will be. It might not stay at that level, but we are going to head to a $250,000 number. No financial advice here.
Right. No, and none of this is anything. This is a pure entertainment. We're shooting the shit here.
Totally.
So how do you not advise here? How would you suggest someone consider gaining exposure? I believe that we have an under-owned rally. The rally happened fast. Last year was non-consensus. It was a hated rally. I think there's a lot of money in the sidelines, just like an equity market, the same phenomena. There's skepticism in the equity market. There's skepticism around digital assets. And the trend is up, right? So if someone wants to get positioned, what do they do? Do they wait? Do they chase? Do they put a
No. I think the ETF's a great product. I mean, listen, the ETF product is going to invest in other products, not just Bitcoin. So obviously today there are other ETFs that are going to come online. At some point there will be ETFs based on XRP or other tokens as well. That's where we're going. And I think that anybody that doesn't think that currency is going to be digitized in this day and age, I look back at this idea of just Visa and MasterCard. At the end of the day, some of the projects that we're working on today, like a product called Renegade, which is a unlimited black American Express type card, you're going to load your crypto through your Neo bank account, and you're going to be able to buy a car, buy a house, go to a hotel. That hasn't happened before. So let me just give you a little idea. In the last, I would say, 15, 16 years in Bitcoin, you've never been able to have a credit card that you could actually go to a meaningful hotel and put a $20,000 or $30,000 deposit and actually have a credit card that works. We are there now. And what I would say to you in terms of, we talk about surfing, today people are surfing 100-foot waves. You couldn't do that, 30, 40 years ago, riding, some type of foam board or some board that couldn't handle that. So again, the equipment is there, the rails are there, where we're going to be able to have Bitcoin as this product that will now compound. Candidly, my number for Bitcoin is somewhere around a $10 trillion market cap. It's a big number.
That would displace gold at that point, right?
Absolutely. So, and what is gold? At the end of the day, gold, which is something we see in the UAE a lot, it's not something that you can add to your credit card. Probably the UAE is one of the only places you can take gold to a bank and they'll actually arbitrage it and give you credit into your bank account. That doesn't exist in the United States. Right. And I think at the end of the day, what I love about the GCC region is that they take the old and the new, they take gold, and then they take something like crypto, and they find the hybrid in between. Yeah. That's why I'm here.
I mean, look, we should spend a few minutes. We'll come back to UAE and Dubai. I mean, it's extraordinary what's happening there.
I mean, I'm looking at the Burj Khalifa right now. Every time I look at it, I'm like, wow.
It's the third Singapore. Incredible amount of wealth and entrepreneurship and creativity there. If you're an entrepreneur, especially non-US, there are a lot of benefits to going there. If you're a US citizen, they'll tax you on globally sourced income. So less benefits there. You want to go to Puerto Rico. So, you're right. On payments, we saw an app at the Sushi Roundtable where for the first time you can go to a Ubit, exactly. Philip Lord, he provided a demo. I have my Twitter page. Yeah, he's terrific. Yeah. And you can, any merchant around the world that accepts Visa and MasterCard, you can pay in crypto. They don't even know that that's happening on the back end behind the scenes. So the engineering's been solved. It's a slick, first-class Apple Pay experience. It's like Apple Pay for crypto. So that's happening now. So people want to look for use cases. That's one. Payments was always a cornerstone use case. Electronic peer-to-peer cash was the title of Satoshi's paper. So that's coming to life. I guess before we move past crypto, any other thoughts on crypto? If not, we'll go to AI.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think that the one thing to remember, and again, I'm specifically spending the year outside of the US because I want to look at things through what I call a different empathetic lens. What has happened in the US in the last 4 years under this administration is that the US has been desensitized to crypto, and that is a problem. You're taking a global population of 8 or 9 billion people. The US, which is the greatest liquidity provider in capital markets out there, has decided to basically halt growth in a sector where the rest of the world, major governments and major countries have decided to embrace it. And I think that people that are tuning in from the US, and I try to explain it to all my investment banker friends and legal professional friends, they just don't get it. You were there. You were at Satoshi. You saw it.
I fully agree. Look, Japan is ahead of the curve. Singapore is ahead of the curve. The European Union has the MiCA framework. And Singapore's bid is to become a dominant global capital market. And BlackRock has been teaming up with the Singapore Monetary Authority and testing tokenization on chain. They see where the hockey puck is going. And that's why BlackRock is getting into this, because they see it as imperative to their success and also American national success. So no, I agree. It's unfortunate. And I think the other driver that'll shape politics, I'd love to get your take on this, is the rise of crypto billionaires. There's far more than people think. They're not on the Forbes list. By the way, there's a ton of crypto China billionaires that are leaving China, by the way. And there's $50,000 cap on the amount of local currency renminbi you can take out of China. That doesn't apply to Bitcoin. That doesn't apply to decentralized currency. And so in the United States as well, you're having a wellspring of crypto billionaires. And I think that is going to reshape political dynamics. I'd love to get your take there.
I would say most of those people that are friends of ours don't want to be found. They're very under the radar. I think the ones that are out there as influencers talking about it are not the ones you think they are. And I would say to you that we definitely have spent time with people in the UAE that fall into that category. I call them the people that are, usually holding over 50 to 100,000 Bitcoins. But those individuals have also diversified into securities and other things. I do think that today, when you look at a Forbes list, it's very inaccurate.
And they're missing Vladimir Putin, who should be on the top of that list, probably. Yeah. I'd say another point on crypto is that I think from the outside looking in, it's easy to critique and judge. And you started with the point around religion. People say, oh, it's a tribe. They've got this one idea and these are like crazy. But the reality is, like, the thoughtfulness and the intellectual caliber of people in the category is very impressive. I mean, they've lived through multiple cycles in 10 years, let's say, versus someone in TradFi living through 30 years to get 3 cycles under the belt. And they're studying human psychology, the history of money, economic policy, the role of narratives, technicals, fundamentals. And I've been consistently impressed with the caliber, and they're very creative. They're entrepreneurs, they're building businesses, they're forward thinking. They consider the proper role of government and sovereignty and rights, and interested in philosophy. So I'm sure that's your experience as well.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say to you, in any business, you're going to have your good and bad. I would say what I love about, again, the UAE and the GCC in general, and again, Saudi is they're in the gaming space. This is a place where, hats off to people like Dr. Marwan that have really taken it upon themselves to make this place super progressive in this, what I would call, a futuristic city. If this conversation it wasn't surrounded by the UAE, we would be really undervaluing what this place has done.
Right.
I would tell you, my best friend in Dubai is a gentleman by the name of Waleed. He was one of the co-founders of Ripple, was one of the founders of 1inch. He brought crypto here. He moved here in 2011. He sold XRP here in 2014 and 2015. Nobody's trying to slow you down and desensitize you. First of all, a lot of people have the wrong narrative when it comes to the UAE. A lot of people say scammers. Number one is, today I had an issue with a rental property that I rented last month, and I needed to call the happiness company. So there's a company in Dubai that deals with certain things, and it's the happiness customer service experience. So I do believe when you come to a city like this or Singapore, and they're using words and they're using frequency of energy when it comes to money and safety and other things, it's going to empower this movement. And I would say to you, this region has definitely been part of this bull run. I think we'd all be kidding ourselves if we weren't honest about it. So what I would say to you, and I'm very thankful for the SEC of approving the ETF, this what I would call orthogonal, these two accesses of the ETF and this UAE critical mass coming together, I believe is a big part of this bull run.
No, I agree. It's an important part of the story. So before we go to AI, are there other themes in crypto you're looking at, whether it's tokenization or gaming or decentralized infrastructure, or are you primarily focused on the Bitcoin story?
I mean, listen, we are GPs in a number of funds. We are investors in Republic. We are GPs in Contango Digital. We have exposure in different funds. We invest in token projects ourselves. But I would say to you, after 14 and 15 years of being in the space, we were going to launch our own token in 2017, which was a security token very similar to what Republic has launched. We decided not to do that. We are about to launch our own token called DeFi.Gold, which is an NFT marketplace using Taproot technology. So for us right now, and the team that we have that we're working with, we are dedicated right now to people actually spending their Bitcoin. So when we look at the market cap of Bitcoin hitting 2 trillion and then moving to this $10 trillion number, those billionaires and millionaires want to use their Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, no, it's right on the mark. DeFi on Bitcoin is a narrative that hasn't captured enough attention and focus on. Of course, you've got product market fit on stable coins and payments, and lending and borrowing on chain makes a lot of sense. So excited to see you launch that. So
absolutely.
In UAE, take us back a month. We had Sam Altman and NVIDIA CEO Jensen talking about silicon in the desert, silicon building on silicon. There's reportedly this comment about how Sam is contemplating raising a bunch of money to go build a chip fabricator. He is using increasingly, I would call, hyperbolic terminology to describe the potential of AI. Like, I'm excited about AI too. I just think we're in a slow takeoff world. AI can summarize, it can draft, but it's like an intern that makes mistakes and you need to supervise it. You can't really delegate decision making to it. You can't trust it yet. So what is UAE doing around AI, and what do you think about Sam's comments around building this fab? And is he just chasing NVIDIA at this point and late to the game?
No. I mean, listen, I try to explain. So Sam was actually an advisor to a company that I was heavily involved with. I was advising the same company. It was called Talkable at YC in 2011. So, I watched Sam as someone that was a student at YC become a partner very quickly, all the way to watching, Sam take over Paul Graham's role. I think that anytime, number one, Sam is at genius level smart, whatever is going on with him and Elon. But the fact that he learned how to paddle out by Paul Graham and basically had that level of caliber of people around him, there's no doubt of where he was going to be today. And I think at the end of the day, I love Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is definitely somebody that should not be taken lightly. He
Mhm.
actually reminds me of, one of those 300-pound Polynesian guys that it's like it's breaking 50 feet at Waimea, and he decides to bring his like 14-foot board out to ride one of these waves. That's Elon. Elon can surf every break in the world. He's just that good. But I try to explain to people a lot of times, Sam is on the precipice, obviously, of being one of those people that is investing in everything from longevity to AI to
Nuclear.
he's investing in everything right now because we see him on the cap tables. So at the end of the day, if you're not thinking that Sam is going to be also at that Elon Musk level, you're kidding yourself.
I-
And at the end of the day,
yeah.
there are new kids grabbing surfboards today, and they're going to be surfing those big waves as well.
Like I'd agree. I think look, I have a bucket called Level 99 Mage, and there's three people in that bucket. Sam Altman is one of them.
Yeah.
Larry Summers, of course, Larry's on the board of OpenAI too. Larry, Treasury Secretary, almost became the Fed chair, kind of shamed the Fed into raising rates, you could say. And the third is Elon. So I think those are very impressive people. Have you looked into Sam's thesis around building a fab in the UAE, and is it partially a response against the US's approach to having kind of safety and regulating AI, and the UAE has a more permissive climate, not just for crypto but also for AI, and is he appealing to that?
I think at the end of the day, again, I people come to the UAE because they are using the money that they have facilitated from hydrocarbon to put into other industries. It's also a very, very progressive place where, as long as you respect the religion and the laws here, they are all for a better life for everyone. I think when you look at what they do for the local Emiratis, and how at the end of the day, this sounds really strange, but I've now been in the UAE for over 120 days cumulatively since last October. I've probably seen a total of maybe 5 police cars, like everything down to how they give the speeding tickets, to just how everything sort of operates here. It's it's built as a city to make you, how would it this place is to optimize your life. And
Yeah,
for
there's
so
a,
and
there's a
yeah
lot.
and for
I agree. I agree. It's
yeah,
frictionless.
it is. I'll give you an idea. I wake up. This city is so similar to. It's like the best version of Las Vegas, because they take out all the bad stuff, and you have a 24-hour city where basically you can have access to anything that's empowering for yourself. I appreciate that.
The service in the UAE is extraordinary. You push the Uber button, you have a number of cars showing up like within 1 or 2 minutes. The service culture is extraordinary. The ability to raise a family at low cost, because there is this kind of two-tier economy where there's talent that they're importing from overseas for they're looking to move for a better life, etc. No, really, when I get off the plane in Dubai, these airports are caricatures of culture, right? They're imperfect. And I'm looking at I'm leaving the airport and I say, gee, this kind of feels like a mix of Vegas and Disney. And then you get into the real substance of Dubai and you say, wow, there's an incredible amount of culture. You go to the Louvre Museum as well in Abu Dhabi, and you see the high rises and the art and the culinary cuisine. So it's really quite extraordinary. But then after a week there, I said, wait a minute, this is just Disney in Vegas altogether. On the way back home. But no, it is an extraordinary place. Look, Dubai was built in a desert. It wasn't there 20 years ago. There was a leadership. They had a vision. They say, we want to go do this, and took a very deliberate approach to building something out of nothing in a desert without that much oil capital, by the way, either.
Well, let's go back to your question. Why is Sam Altman here? Yeah. Why was Tucker Carlson here? People come here because they understand they're not going to deal with the political warfare and what I would call the bureaucratic human monetization of suffering that is going on in the US. And I really try not to go down this road in conversation, but I'm a major taxpayer. Fortunately, I do have a US passport. I don't use any of what I would call the tax advantages in the UAE. So I would say this to you, that as a man at the age of 48 years old that has been paying taxes probably since I was 15 or 16, I am very disgruntled that I have anxiety with my children living in the United States. As a matter of fact, I don't feel safe in the United States. And this is somebody, I grew up in Washington, D.C., on the verge of when crack and HIV were at the height of the United States.
When you say you don't feel safe in the United States, are you referring to like personal security or the direction of policy?
All of it. All of the above. All of the above. I don't know. So one of the stories that I heard quite frequently in Satoshi was somebody showing up to your home, knocking on the door, and you're going out in handcuffs. Right now, being targeted because of being in certain industries are being too loud. It's not right. The fact of what we are doing, again, to the former president of the United States, using legislation and laws to go after somebody, it's just, we look like a bunch of buffoons. And again, I don't want to get political here, but we've lost the respect of who we were as a superpower. And I think that the commentary, and let's just talk about it here in the UAE and the global citizens I meet here, is people want the US back. People love the United States. We need to be back to who we were before. There's a reason we developed the Elon Musks of the world, the Sam Altmans, the Paul Grahams, Alexis Ohanians. These are people that have been revolutionary in taking technology to where it is. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates.
Is there, when I look around the world, I see the United States as the least dirty shirt in the laundry basket. There's no second rival. China's not close. China's got their own issues. Europe is aging. Russia sacrificed the next generation. Brazil's on the rise. India is definitively on the rise. Disposable income there is on the rise. Dubai is a very special place. It's really a hub. Uh,
let's call it the GCC. That's what it is. I mean, I'm actually very excited about Saudi. Saudi for me, I feel is going to be on par with Dubai, if
Dubai
not.
in part grew from Saudi nationals wanting to enjoy life in Dubai. It's like
Absolutely,
how do I
absolutely.
suspend this code of life, go to Dubai, hang out, Vegas and Disney, go back, and then get back into the code of life? It's kind of a different kind of arbitrage. In the same way, someone from New York might go to Vegas for 3 days. But let's double back on Sam. So Sam, you saw him grow up in Y Combinator. What were the personal qualities about Sam, or any unique insights into that allowed him to
It's a
achieve success?
I remember Facebook messaging Sam about my idea of building uh, the next socially conscious Berkshire Hathaway. And I remember, his response to me, which I can't exactly word for word, but Sam is just an empowering person. He's a good person. And I think whatever is going on with Elon Musk and that whole rivalry, I think at the end of the day, Sam is a high caliber good person that really wants to see the best for the next generations to come. And I would tell you for who Paul Graham was, which I think a lot of people don't understand that Y Combinator, again, I don't want to speculate on the value of that business, but I would say
Ordinary business.
it's a jargonaut. There's no doubt that in the next decade, the compound returns of what Paul Graham seeded back in 2006 will be something revolutionary. And I think that at the end of the day, that firepower that Sam Altman has of YC behind him, it's like the idea of just being
Mm.
able to have like 10,000 surfboards to choose from. And that's why I think this whole rivalry with Elon is so emotional. When I see, because I remember watching OpenAI and Elon seeding that for Sam. So I think it's more of, let's say, an ego thing where it's like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of this stuff that is going on, I don't want to get into the Illuminati and the deep state, but I do believe there are puppeteers that do things to create these types of rivalries. And
Well,
this
look,
is
it's
the part of the this is the part that I don't like.
I would say, look, they're competitors. That's one. They're going to duke it out in the public. Elon Musk owns the largest public square, and three, he benefits from the marketing attention. So I think it's a sound strategy for Elon. We won't have to spend too much time on that, but I agree. Like,
Yeah.
Y Combinator is a real force, right? Airbnb, Coinbase, DoorDash, Dropbox, Instacart, Reddit, Stripe, Twitch, and now we're seeing a proliferation of Y Combinator copycats. Right? Peter Thiel is going to launch an accelerator. A16Z is launching an accelerator. Sequoia is launching an accelerator. Bain Capital is launching. I've been pitched so many accelerators. And of course, as you know, the reason they're doing this, they're trying to move upstream to get a better valuation and then cherry pick the good deals, co-fund it, and then take these startups from cradle to grave into public markets.
It's just it's something that's not going to be replicated at this point because the open the between everything that's going on in the US today and just the limitations that we have in the United States, for me, and I don't want to overstep this, the next YC that you see will come out of somewhere like the UAE or Saudi. And I would say to you, I'm even more convinced now when I see somebody like, Cristiano Ronaldo and other people that are living in this region. We're not being empowered at the level that we need to be in the United States. Look at the public markets today. We have 50% less big board companies on the two largest stock exchanges than we did 10 years ago. We have 50% less.
Right.
So again, if you don't empower people, you desensitize them.
Mhm.
So the talent today, my friends from Y Combinator are literally messaging me every day saying, I'll give you a good idea. Brad Cam, one of the companies we funded from Unstoppable Domains, he messaged me the other day. He said, I want to come to Dubai. What's going on there?
Mhm.
And that's a
Yeah,
normal
I can see
that's a
that.
normal conversation with people.
Right. Look, venture hubs require an angel network, skillful entrepreneurs, and then recycling the ecosystem, local university. That's certainly in Dubai. I think there are other places too, though, like India. You can hire an engineer in India, maybe 60% of US salary, but they get far more disposable income. And that's becoming a new wealth hub. And they also have those other conditions. So I think Singapore.
Let's talk about it for what it is. The UAE and the GCC region understands that when you give a company in the US $1 million and you give a company in India $50,000, it's the Indian company is going to do better than the US company, hands down, because the stewarding of capital in the US, and I think the proficiency of, we became a very lazy hub in the last so many years in the US. And that's why it's very hard for me to believe. I think we've lost some major years.
Do you mean when you say become a lazy hub? I get the policy points you're making. I get around the hospitality.
I just think when you look at today, the hard workingness and the talent coming out
Culture.
of the US, yeah, the culture that coming out of these regions here, you got to realize everything in terms of what YC built, it was a funnel for the top people in the world internationally and locally to apply. So Y Combinator would get 100,000 applications each class, and they would accept 100 companies. Today, people understand that some of the things that they want to build and the issues with visas and other things, it's just not that simple to come to
Right.
the US anymore. That is the tip.
It's absurd.
That,
It's absurd.
yeah, that, so
3 to 7 million illegal immigrants instead of controlling, qualifying the talent we need.
where did Elon Musk come from?
South Africa.
Okay.
Where did Sergey Brin come from? Russia.
Yeah, exactly. So you have the largest population of what I would call the best talent from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, coming right to this region.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
It's no, I agree. They've United States is built on immigration, property rights, the rule of law, and Dubai is copying a playbook that worked. Let's go to AI now. So
yeah,
I'll frame up this topic for you. I'd love to get your critique. When I look at the dot-com cycle, we had legitimate front-end consumer innovation. We had the rise of email, killer app people are using every day. We had Netscape Navigator. We had chat. These were wondrous experiences, be able to communicate with someone online. With the rise of e-commerce and Amazon. We also had the transformation of ERP systems to online just-in-time inventory. Today, where we are is, look, we're going to see AI innovation in the back end, right? Call centers are getting displaced. AI customer service agents are displacing what Klarna is doing. But on the front end, it seems like a letdown. It seems like there was some novelty, some initial usage. I'm paying my $20 a month for ChatGPT, but I can't trust it yet. It does some drafting in summer. It doesn't quite get the tone that I'm looking for. So are we set up for AI disillusionment in the near term?
I think we're very good at that. we love to hype things in general, and that doesn't matter what region of the world you're in. What do they say? The hype is real. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, we're still in the beginning stages, and I appreciate, I do appreciate where NVIDIA and other companies are. Number one, this idea of machine learning and AI has been around for a long time. We've been chatting about machine learning at Y Combinator since, what I would say the periods around 2010. So this is nothing new, but I think the idea of this narrative where we want to talk about, you know, AI destroying the world and robots and things like that. Again, I think this comes down to, and I'm going to go through a number of, maybe tangents, but this also comes down to the consciousness of what we program into the AI. So again, who is feeding those data sets, who's training those AIs, and I think this is where you can look at the world in two narratives. You can look at it as the doom and gloom and everybody, things not working out, or you can look at it as there's a new generation of people and things that are coming into fruition. If you look at these, what I would call rulers or people that are coming up, let's talk about the gentleman running Saudi. He's under 40 years old. He has a different narrative and perspective when he's looking at what the future of AI is going to be for his kingdom and what that is for what Saudi does with the rest of the world. So I just think, and a lot of people have talked about it, this idea of the old Diet Coke over 60 or 70-year-old person, that that frequency has to change. Don't take it the wrong way, and I think you're younger than I am. I don't look at myself today. I can provide wisdom, but the frequency of what this next generation is going to be like my children, they're looking at the world in a very different place. And I
I
and I
agree.
look and I look at this one metric. Look at the idea of alcohol consumption today. Alcohol consumption is way down because we have introduced other products like cannabis and psychedelics and other things. That is a collective consciousness where the world is changing. And I will tell you this, in the next decade, it's going to look very, very different.
I agree. Now it's happening now. I mean, you're seeing new modes of education. You're seeing homeschooling on the rise. I met a highly successful early Bitcoin investor who left California, moved to the Philippines, and he's homeschooled his kids, 99th percentile. They've got a robotics lab. They have local teachers. They fly in teachers. They also have YouTube education. That might sound weird. It's actually highly curated. It's better than Khan
It
Academy on
happens all the
topics.
time.
And it's inspired learning too. The kids are helping to direct the curriculum. Got an 11-year-old kid who knows calculus now. That kid is actually helping my 5-year-old build his curriculum out now. Uh, so on psychedelics, right? You've been an investor in psychedelics. You focus on that as a category. I
Yep.
believe psychedelics is going to have a faster take rate than cannabis. The use cases and the scope of application are broader. Cannabis was like, treating, pain. And now you've got studies from Johns Hopkins, Imperial College, and NYU coming online showing the efficacy around depression, postpartum depression, smoking cessation. It goes on and on and on.
Yep.
So what's your thesis around psychedelics? How are you expressing your views?
I mean, listen, I don't look at it as just psychedelics. I look at it as adaptogenic frequency uh, medicines. Again, a lot of people don't understand this, but coffee is a psychedelic. There's many in Hawaii. Part of my studies there, part of the kitchen chemist and the farmers that I spent time with, we discussed over 2,000 plant products that we consider super compounds. So I think today, and again,
Wow.
going back,
Wow.
yeah. It's actually something in the range of 2,200 super compound plant products that are actually indigenous to Hawaii. So again, when you look at where AI is today and where technology is and where you can bring, Richard Feynman talked about nature's perfect tapestry. So when you can take nature and you can take these medicinal plants and you can actually use technology to help you build these, what I call nano super compounds that can help you treat mental illness, they can help you treat different things that you're going through. We're moving into a much different world than we were 5 years ago. So at the end of the day today, when I look at my own regiment of what I take and the things that I use outside of psychedelics, whether that's specific types of coffees, NAD, different types of IV drips, all I'm saying to
Yeah.
you is the compounded medicine that is going to be created in the next 3 to 5 years, being able to use AI with what I call super compounds, it's going to be something like you could never even imagine. And I said this in a podcast, I think probably 7 years ago. I'm looking forward to the day that I can show up at my smoothie shop, I can give my handprint, and I can get my perfect smoothie with all the most perfect adaptogens. That's where the world is going. And I think that, there's a gentleman here that I speak with quite a bit that is a master tokenomics person. He used to be the head derivatives trader at Aramco. He talks about this idea of quantum money. How about I give it to you better than that? Quantum medicine. That's actually what I'm excited about, is where you can actually use
Mhm.
money, medicine, everyday items that should not be depleting or desensitizing. And again, sometimes these conversations can go over people's heads, but the reality today is we can heal people of many different
Well,
things.
I agree. Look, I think we're rediscovering a lot of ancient wisdom, and adaptogens have millennia year histories. Like ashwagandha is a very popular adaptogen, very popular in India and Morocco, for example. There's Rhodolia, rosea,
Yeah,
and quite a few others. And then on the psychedelic side, you have, as you pointed out, indigenous tribes. Some of them have shamanic histories behind them. And there are different kinds of these psychedelics as well, ranging from DMT, or in a certain variation called ayahuasca, where there's like
yeah,
a sacred ritual wrapped around it, or ibogaine, I
yeah.
believe. Well, so on the psychedelics cat, I'll tell you another funny story. So I was in Silicon Valley
Sure.
about a month and a half ago. I met with 5 VCs and 5 founders. And so psychedelics came up, but I'm trying to find the next trend, of course. What's the next big wave coming, right? I haven't found how to express anything around this category, but I'm looking forward to learning that from you. But anyway, 5 out of the 5 VCs have incorporated psychedelics into their practice. It might be a daily practice, microdose, it might be a quarterly, it might be annual. They've incorporated into a practice, though. 5 out of the 5 founders have not. They're busy getting shit done and building. But there was a contrast there. So I find that I guess VCs maybe are not as comfortable talking about it publicly. Tim
Let,
Ferriss.
let, 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 let's I'm just going to throw this out there and we'll
Yeah,
talk about it.
yeah.
So what I would say, the apartment complex in San Francisco, where most of the people from YC lived in SF, the commonality was psychedelics, Bitcoin, and cannabis. This was a very so
Right.
I could take you back to 2011, 2012, 2013. This was a very common conversation and common practice of people. And again, I don't want to name names, but
Sure.
yes, we were all talking about our first ayahuasca experiences. And I would tell you that today, when you look at crypto where it is today, or crowdfunding and ICOs and IDOs, those products that are where they are today were definitely inspired by the use of ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, and these types of medicines. And I can tell you, many of those companies did visit us in Hawaii.
Oop. There we go. David is
Yeah.
back. Right at the highlight, David. It felt my heart having skip a beat there too. So what you're saying is that Sam Altman went to a mountain, had mushrooms, and built WorldCoin. I'm kidding. You didn't say that.
I'm not. Listen, I don't. Let me be very clear with you. I've never done any. I've never done any psychedelics with Sam Altman, but I can tell you that in 2012, 2013, there was an apartment complex, and it's at the tip of my tongue, that we used to hang out with. A lot of people in San Francisco know it, and this was a place where it frequented the accelerators in San Francisco, and the idea of doing dabs and ayahuasca and DMT pens and these ideas of building different types of technologies, those products inspired. And
Well,
I would
Elon,
say,
like Elon clearly is at least one of the 3 level 99 majors. I don't know about Larry Summers. That's another conversation for another time.
yeah,
But so in your personal experience, what have you, if you're willing to share, this is a
sure.
personal question,
Yeah.
how has psychedelics changed you, better or worse, or what experiences, what would you want to share around that?
I mean, sure. I mean, I'm happy to. Listen, by the time I was 20 years old, I was on 100 milligrams of Adderall. By the time I was in fifth or sixth grade, I was sniffing Ritalin. Obviously, like many people of today, I was diagnosed of many things. Let's just use the simplest term: ADHD or ADD, or, Asperger's. And at the end of the day, those products, and a lot of us did not know it, were actually just methamphetamines used as prescription drugs that actually caused many issues with the microbiome and actually destroyed many nervous systems. A lot of people don't like to talk about this, but Adderall is a $40 billion company. And these are products that we give to children as well. So I think at the end of the day, for me, I needed to find a different way to medicate or treat myself outside of using these harsh prescription products that made me feel awful. And I think beyond that, psychedelics added a narrative, not just for me, but many people that I know in the technology space, that allowed you to give yourself a level of authenticity and empathy to everything around you. One of the things that I, candidly do for free today for a lot of entrepreneurs is I meet many hundred millionaires and billionaires that have very low emotional intelligence. And at the end of the day, these types of products help people deal with trauma in their lives that sometimes, even when you make a lot of money, you've never dealt with those traumas. And I'm using myself as an example. I did very well in my business career, but I needed to deal with trauma that I had as a child. I needed to deal with my own, whatever people told me was wrong with my brain. I needed to figure out how to treat that. And that was my roadmap to going and learning about plant medicine. And I think today, people talk about frequency or vibe, or, feeling something in your heart. At the end of the day, because we've desensitized ourselves so much, now we're having to turn to these products to now peel the onion, so to say.
The 41 million Adderall prescriptions. Adderall had a shortage not too long ago. There's an Adderall epidemic, and people are medicating or self-medicating, and sometimes with alcohol, other kinds of things to address issues. I think one of the learnings from COVID is that everyone's got trauma. Everyone had to themselves and their loneliness and address issues. So when you mentioned that you've done journeys or invited entrepreneurs, extraordinary wealth, and they don't have an emotional sensitivity, is that because they're on spectrum like Asperger's syndrome, or is it more?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no doubt that I would say many of the people I co-invest with, or have invested in, have some level of Asperger's. But I would tell you that beyond that realm of labeling somebody to have, high functioning ADD or ADHD, or, a lot of people with Asperger's that I know are very, very smart. The problem that I find with the world today is that through diet and through media and through all of these different products, we've just desensitized ourselves, where we're basically having to it's like cleaning off a chalkboard. We now have to come in and clean off 50 to 100 years of desensitization. I mean, one of the things that I would hear a lot when pretty incredible entrepreneurs was the use of porn. And again, I'm not good or bad.
Porn addiction.
Yeah, porn addiction. Or another thing that many male entrepreneurs would tell me is that they were molested as children, or somebody had some type of some man had penetrated them, and this would happen in the male or female sense. And I think that at the end of the day, I don't know if where we are today, where we need to publicize it all over social media and this, and that, and we need to treat people, and we need to be able to empower people. To create trauma where we want to continually hurt each other doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say as a society, and what I appreciate about psychedelics and the idea of empathy, is these are products that are going to let you see the world out of a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
Number one,
go ahead and address those addictions as well that you're referencing.
Absolutely. And I would say to you, and even more today than ever, because I see so many so-called shamans and this idea of taking ayahuasca as a recreational product, I will tell you right now that anytime you're going to take these types of products, you need to be with a trained professional or trained medical professional to use any type of products like this, because they are dangerous. If not,
absolutely.
I mean, when you talk about something like ayahuasca, the preparation to take a product like ayahuasca, there's multiple months of going into preparing for ayahuasca, especially if you're on any type of antidepressants, if you have any type of health issues, if you have dietary issues. So I just think at the end of the day, when we come into a world, and again, these products are not legal in the UAE or in the GCC region,
or the United States. Most of them are Schedule 1 class.
No. But I can tell you that there are open conversations, even in regions of the world that they're not legal, to understand that part of empowering humans is using these native plant medicines.
There's a great book by Michael Pollan, who's been studying the history of plant medicine. He's a journalist who wrote a book actually on caffeine, another one on plant medicine. I encourage people to take a look at that. No, I do find that I think it's a powerful new trend. I was hiking Bear Mountain with my boys, my daughter, in the fall of last year, and we came across a path of a man in his mid 30s who's heavily tattooed and had like gang signs. And I instinctively, as a dad, I brought in my kids closer.
Yeah.
And so I judged him, and he knew that. And like, I want to just protect my kids, and I didn't even, it was a reflex action. We get to the top, and somehow we find ourselves in a conversation. And he says, "Yeah, look, I've been to jail. I've been a heroin addict." And he says, "I took ayahuasca. It broke my addiction in immediately." And he worships. You know, he's contributing to his community. It was an extraordinary conversation. I had another conversation with a woman who had postpartum depression. She was on the rocks with her husband, about to get a divorce, took psychedelics, and they both did actually. They renewed their love for one another and reoriented the meaning that they have in that family. I thought those were both beautiful stories. So
I would say to you, those are great stories, but that's not realistic.
share
I,
yeah.
I think the reality of it is ayahuasca and the number of times you take it is going to be different for everyone. And I would say that a lot of people do not discuss this, but the post integration of any of these products is even more, uh, it contributes to the healing potential of the product even more than taking of the product. So I would just say to you, yes, integration is everything when it comes to these products. So I appreciate there are people that take these products and it's an instant they're better. But I would say tell you that probably 99% of the time that's not the case.
Right.
I would tell you on a aspirational level of my own use, I've probably taken psychedelics 1,000 times.
Wow.
And
Okay,
I
we have to go there in a moment. So
yeah.
wow.
So
A whole other
yeah,
show, David.
yeah. So
So look, ecotourism is growing, right? People are going to Costa Rica,
yes.
take ayahuasca. There are a
Yeah.
number of publicly listed firms in Canada because, again, psilocybin, outside the context of certain mushroom and ritual scenarios, which are protected under the First Amendment. Talk to your lawyer. But
Yeah.
there are companies in Canada that went public, like Field Trip Medical, where you can have an experience that's assisted and it's guided. Essentially, these clinics, kind
Yeah.
of like a variation on like a ketamine clinic, which is starting to grow in the United States.
Unfortunately, they went bankrupt, but yes.
That's right. It seems like kind of old. Like, I haven't tracked the category, but I see that they
And
haven't.
anytime you add capital to anything like this, there can be good and bad. It's like it's like religion.
Right. Well, money mixing. It's like money and religion. Look, you get the tithing behavior comes out of it. You get a lot of power control dynamics, and
Yeah.
so why haven't those business models taken off to the extent that you've studied them?
I mean, like anything else, I think that, this you can take this conversation in many different directions, but I think at the end of the day, the people don't want to do the work any further. I'll give you a great example we've been talking a lot about in the UAE. We've been chatting about the investment that was made into NVIDIA by Sequoia, which my understanding is they've never sold a single share to date, and the actual rate of return is 146,000%. So again, I
Wow.
think when you look at that metric and you look at when they invested to where they are today, and again, I deal with this conversation every day with my own investors, is that it looks great. The grass always looks great. And yes, a lot of people are making a lot of money in the crypto business, and there's a lot of promo and pump and dump even in Canada and the US. But that's really not the reality of longitudinally building a company that's going to survive long term. And again, I think NVIDIA is a company that's over 20 years old. I don't want to misspeak, but at the end of the day, it does take time to build a company that is fully compliant and that is
Yeah.
following all the rules. I could tell you today, because I had this conversation on the beach with somebody, the only legal exchange in the UAE today is M2. But there are
Hmm.
many exchanges that are operating out of the UAE that are, they're working on getting their VARA licenses, but they are using loopholes to work in other regions. A lot of people don't want to discuss this, but I'm going to talk about it because, I did invest in Scott from Prime Trust that used to run the KYC AML for CZ. At the end of the day, and we had this conversation when I was at Satoshi, it's unfortunate that most people think that it's okay to break the rules to progressively make your business that much better or advance your business. And I think that a lot of people don't want to give the credit where credit is due to somebody like Brian Armstrong. I
Hmm.
was actually at YC when Brian raised money. He hardly raised somewhere around 500 or 600,000. Some of the money was crowdfunded, and at the end of the day, when you look at Coinbase today, that's a 12-year journey.
Right. I mean, we've exited the period of manufacture to deliver SaaS startups that get exited into public markets within 5 years, and you hire a VP of sales and you're done. That game is
No.
done. And even now, we still see IPOs of low quality companies. A bunch of these came
Yeah.
out to the stock market. There are some great businesses out there like MongoDB and the Datadogs of the world and the Cloudflares of the world. We own 2 out of 3 of those, and Atlassian
Yeah,
team from this morning, by the way. So
totally.
I agree. Now, on look, yeah, the law matters, even if you don't agree with the law. There are judicial processes to consider or jurisdiction, right? CZ, let's go there for a bit. So CZ's in Seattle. I don't know if you tracked that story. So he's in Seattle. Uh, it looks like the freshest data I've heard is that he might go to jail for 12 to 18 months, but after that, he's done. Binance is still the leading exchange globally. They've made $700 million just on their venture portfolio, taking ICOs on their exchange. And CZ is another multi-billionaire success story that's come out of crypto. And I don't think people fully appreciate that.
I think CZ is an incredible, entrepreneur. I just think that why go and operate in the United States? Why fly back to the United States? I think there's a level of pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered, and I don't necessarily want to get into the
Sure.
entire conversation of CZ and Binance, but I do think I think it's going to be very subjective. I think that the UAE has done everything in their power to help CZ and to empower Binance. And I think that give credit where credit is due. But I do think it was it, I don't ever think putting yourself out there like a martyr is always the best way to handle things. I think fine, he could have paid his fine, he could have dealt with things the way I don't like the way the story is,
Mhm.
because I think it gives people a bad narrative into what they can get away with. And I think that
Yeah.
I'd be lying to myself to not tell you that during this journey of being involved with Y Combinator and being in all of these spaces very early, that I didn't see bad behavior when it came down to KYC and AML. And I'm going to say this because I do believe the UAE believes this and they want to enforce it. I think that we are still very far away from protecting the retail consumer when it comes to products in the crypto space and the way that tokens get launched and everything else. And I'm going to tell you this as somebody that's launching their own token. I think that if you break the law, you should deal with the time and punishment.
Well, I say, look, we need clarity on the law. And, when the SEC says come in and register, I don't think they're being sincere around.
I think if you look at it outside of the U.S. and you look at somebody, you look at exchanges that are front running tokens, and I'm not saying that's the case at Binance. I'm just saying in general, uh, most exchanges are taking a percentage of the total token allocation, and they are dumping it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, there's a lot of issues.
We call it spray and pray or something. So again, it's I just think at the end of the day, we've gone into this conversation about empathy and consciousness. I think the bottom line is to look at the glass half full. The
Mhm.
beauty of it is, thankfully, we're going to get a new president in the United States. I think these wars are all going to be over at some point, and hopefully we can start building back humanity, and we can replicate the beauty of the UAE and the GCC, where I can walk around at 3 a.m. and I don't have a problem being robbed. I can have safety.
I'm
I
going to
can
find
have a
you a house next to me in New Jersey. So I feel pretty safe. I'm not
okay.
disputing that like Oakland is a mess and there are areas of like the Tenderloin and SF that are a mess. Although downtown financial district I thought was really clean and pretty good. But let's go back to psychedelics. You had 1,000 psychedelic journeys here. I think that might be, well, you're number two after Stanislav Graf, who is a professor at Berkeley,
Yes.
who wrote these seminal papers around LSD in the 50s, kind of was excommunicated and brought back into the fold and inspired a number of people like Chris Bosch and I guess Tim Ferriss too,
Mhm.
to
Sure.
kind of open up this category. So if you're comfortable with that, what are some of the deepest messages, takeaways, or insights that you've received from those psychedelic journeys?
I mean, I think everything with psychedelics comes down to empathy. I think I think at the end of the day, nothing. We're on this earth a really, really short period of time. It's a long life, but it's a short period of time. I think, going back to many of the people that I've done psychedelics with, I think a lot of times the thing that comes up a lot is death. I would say if you've really taken ayahuasca one time or 100 times, you're gonna find that death is the number one thing that
What is
comes up
that?
for
Do
most
you
people.
experience this kind of ego death, this term that,
Absolutely. Well,
what is
number one, you look at death very, very differently. You actually, I think, look at your life, and there's an appreciation or gratefulness that comes out of it, to understand, like, you have one life, and at the end of it, there is an ending. None of us are going to live forever, as much as everybody thinks that, you know, that can happen. That's not going to, we're not meant to do that. I actually had this conversation with somebody yesterday that's coming with us to Thailand, is that I think we just get very desensitized to what the programming of the world is today. I mean, I would say to you, I have a child, my son, who is a kid that does calculus today at 13 years old. He tests at college levels, very, very smart. But the conversation that he has with me when he thinks about the world today is the idea of nuclear war. And I think that anytime you have children, and I got to tell you, my heart goes out for, the kids in Palestine. My heart goes out to both the, Israelis and Palestinians, as well as, Ukraine and Russia. I mean, I just don't think we're able to see. I think we've become so desensitized as a global world, that the reason we need these psychedelics or adaptogens is to basically see the lens out of other people's eyes. So if I were to go back to the question that you had of what did these 1,000 journeys teach me? Teaches me the one thing that we all bleed the same. It's actually one of the things that I that really invoked inside of me, because I'm not always on my best behavior. Sometimes I can slip up and make some type of a racial remark or say something that's ignorant. And I think that as a society, it's become too okay to do that. That's We need to be better than that.
Been
And I
okay
think,
to have a lower standard of behavior than we should
yeah,
hold ourselves accountable to.
the fact of the matter is, and I'm going to say this candidly, is that I've never felt more comfortable as a Persian Jewish man in an area like the UAE compared to growing up in DC and LA and being called a camel jockey or a san and something. That was the norm for me, a kid growing up in DC and LA. And I would say to you, when I look at moving to Hawaii, I moved to Hawaii because I couldn't handle the venture capitalists and the people that I'd meet in Silicon Valley that would say, oh, we should only give money to the Indians or the immigrants. So just to let you know, for more than 2 decades, those are the level of ignorant conversations that I would listen to.
So you're saying
I could
venture underwriting was race driven.
Absolutely. You would sit with most top tier law firms. And again, I got to watch myself, but I would say that this was the level of conversation that we would have with startups that were in YC or other people that I did business with, where we knew that if you were Indian or you were Asian or you came from Israel, you would get a higher valuation or you would get more funding. And I think the reason that I'm pointing this out is because the fact that that is the way the system works just shows me the level of ignorance and desensitization that is out there. The other thing that I will tell you, and I knew many uh, heads of venture capital firms that candidly would, sleep with a lot of the women that they would invest money in with. And that was a normal course of
Was that in a
business.
coercive way, or is it in the kind of way where I don't know? Was
It
that
it it's
first of
the
all,
way
it's
it's
inappropriate.
the
It's inappropriate and
yeah
it's unprofessional, and
I'm
it shouldn't be
I
permitted, right? Go ahead.
yeah. So I have a daughter who's 11 years old. I don't want my daughter thinking that it is okay for an older man to wave a checkbook in front of me
Right.
in order for me to get money for them to invest in me. And unfortunately, and again, I
It's like
actually
Hollywood.
know
Similar dynamics take place in Hollywood too. And
totally. It takes place all the time. I mean, listen, look at OnlyFans. I mean, I lived in a condominium complex in Miami where we had many OnlyFans girls that will live there, and I had a lot of respect for them. Some of them owned 9 apartments, but at the end of the day, I tell this to every founder that I mentor and I talk to, even the wealthy billionaires and 100 millionaires that I work with them on their emotional intelligence. You
mhm.
have to have wisdom before you have power. That's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah,
So
a profound statement. I agree. Look, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if you're going to have power, you better have judgment, discernment, self governance, and empathy and respect for other people and integrity. There's a lot there. On the on psychedelics, I'm not going to move past that one for a bit. You had 1,000 journeys. You had an ego death. What
I
is
did.
an ego death? Did you have more than one? Like, what did that?
I, 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 I think it's just the level of just like this term always comes into my mind, which is nothing is really real. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, this is a one big movie that we're living in. And I think you have an opportunity every day to do good in the world or be a bad person. I explain it to my kids in the simplest way. Somebody walks out of the grocery store and drops a $50 bill. You have two decisions to make. You pick that up, you put it in your own pocket, or you pick it up and you give it back to that person. And I think that's the basic humanity of just the difference between good and bad and right and wrong. And I think if anything that psychedelics taught me, it taught me this level of this butterfly effect of how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think you think that cheating on your wife doesn't mean you're not going to cheat on your business partner. It all goes hand in hand. And I'm
Mhm.
telling you this as a person that it took me more than 45 years of my life to embrace and understand and live by these teachings. And you know, Naval Ravikant said it best: when you tell one lie, you've now spiraled yourself into many different lies. And I
Self-deception
think,
lied to
yeah,
yourself.
well, you're making up subjective stories in your head.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we can be as subjective as we want to be, but today what we've created as our reality, and I'm not, first of all, again, I love X and I love the idea of free speech and I'm all about it, but I also do believe that we have to look at the world and say to ourselves, hey, it's not right for certain people to do certain things. I think anytime you're promoting violence, hatred, or actually doing destructive things to people, that's where I look at psychedelics, where they can retrain bad behavior that has started through childhood.
Right. Right. I mean, the metaphor I've heard is like snow dropping on a mountain, and you can create a new trail, a new behavior or thought process. When you say you receive these teachings, what does that mean in terms of your experience? Is there a voice? Is there an image? Is it you're interpreting an image? What's your
I mean,
subjective
Uh,
experience?
for me, I don't really take psychedelics anymore at all. I take more adaptogenic products. We make a lot of adaptogenic products ourselves in our
Mm,
business. But what I would say to you is, I think at this point, I've done enough psychedelics where, yeah, I can channel what I would call downloads or input on a frequency basis. I mean, my nickname in the UAE, people call me the Oracle or the fortune teller, and I just think you feel people, you feel energy. It's how you and I connected at Satoshi. It's the way Philip and I connected, or Waleed and I connected. I think that I think as human beings, we think we're so smart, but we forget that nature and energy is just that much smarter than we are. And I think when we're able to develop that neural pathway in our minds, we're able to just look at things in a lot in just in a totally different way. It's a different lens. I'm gonna say this, and I don't want to infer anything, but I think there was a level of empathy for each other where there was a mutual respect. I don't
mhm.
think you'd have me on the show, or I would agree to be on the show if there wasn't an energetic, like it felt right.
It's an honor to have you. I know you don't
Well,
do.
no, thank you. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be on there. Actually, my friend said to me today, he goes, David, you don't even you cancel every podcast that you do, that you commit to. So at the end of the day, I got the notification that I was on this podcast, and I said to my friend Kevin Soltani, I said, this guy, you really, I was moved by him. I felt like he was a good person and you're a very smart person, but I know that you're a good person. And I think that one of the metrics that I read all the time that freaks me out is like 80% of the world has a trust problem. That's scary.
Yes. Yeah. No, I believe. I think they have a
That's a
trust
big.
problem with themselves as well.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it.
Right?
But I would tell you on the basic level of, you asked me about psychedelics and what it taught me. It taught me to understand that I can meet somebody like yourself, and I
Mhm.
know in 30 seconds that I can leave my children with you. I can leave my wife with you. I can
Don't leave
leave
your
my.
children with me, please. I got
I
three
can
back
leave.
here.
At the end
I'll,
at the end of the
I'll give you
day,
my children.
at the end of
Sorry.
the day, there you understand, and I think what I do in business today and what makes me great at what I do is that I'm able to see very, very quickly, do
Mhm.
people have these check boxes,
Mhm.
that it's basic levels of integrity.
It's intuition around that. And you also made this when we spoke. You talked about how when you meet an entrepreneur, you can make a decision, I think, within 30 seconds. I think others at
Yeah.
Y Combinator as well. Could you double click on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a, let's call it a few minutes. I think
Okay.
within a few minutes of meeting somebody, you're going to get a basic understanding of, number one, who they are, how do they listen, you're going to meet your Tinder swindlers out of there that are just so good that you're going to get a couple of those.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, there is a gut intuition, and there's a
Mhm.
feeling that you get. You've done this so many times that you know where the channel is. When in surfing, you get
Mhm.
so good that you can go to any break in the world and you can figure out the channel within 2 minutes. You can look at the way the waves break, and you can understand where you have to paddle out to get so you don't fight the current. It's exactly the same thing when you're deploying money into a business. And again, and I'm going to say this, we're talking about a seed level check or
Right. Right.
Series A. What I would say to you, when we get into larger checks, or we're doing a larger, let's say, public transaction, it's going to be very different. There's a lot of due diligence, but I think on a base level, you're not getting into those conversations with anybody unless they pass what I would call reading the channel. If I can't
Mhm.
read the channel and it
Mhm.
doesn't fit within my checkbox, the conversation is over.
Right. 100%. Let's talk about your journey now. So you started as a club promoter, and then you became a swashbuckling, VC investing in terrific deals. You've got a post-economic lifestyle. Like what? How did you go from A to where you are now?
I mean, originally I lived in an area in Alexandria, Virginia, or in Arlington, Virginia, called Lake Barcroft. I actually grew up outside of Washington, D.C. My first business was shoveling snow. So my next door neighbor was Thurgood Marshall. He was my first client, and former deceased Supreme Court justice.
Right.
And I remember because he was always the first driveway. His wife would give me $50 and a cookie after I was finished. And at that point, I also grew up in a family of
Did you pay
commercial.
$100 for that shoveling?
He would pay me $50.
50 bucks. 50 bucks.
50 bucks
When
at
you were,
this
and how
point.
old were you then?
I was 10 years old, and
That's a lot
I'm
of money
6.
back then. That's a lot of money. Back
It was a good amount. They were long. They
then.
were they were they were long driveways. So
There was a
the
lot.
area the area was called Lake
I
Barcroft.
think
But
50 bucks now, by the way, to get my driveway.
so I grew up with a family that were commercial real estate developers. So the idea of doing business was definitely in my blood. And yeah, when I was 15, 16, 17, I got into electronic dance music. It was actually something that actually soothed my brain. It was something that could temper my Asperger's and my ADD, and started throwing large rave parties. I threw parties in the range of like 50,000 people,
Where did this
and
party Hell,
A lot of them were in Washington D.C. I used to be a promoter for Fifth Column, and a lot of people know like 930 Club and Tracks, and anyway, so that brought me down the road of moving to Los Angeles, and in LA. I sort of just became an entrepreneur, got into real estate, got into different businesses. I owned a UI meta tagging company where we built websites, and I'd receive cash and equity. And through that journey, I started traveling to Hawaii, but got the bug of angel investing. And during that segment of time, cannabis was becoming legal in California medicinally, so got into that business as well. And
what years
yeah,
roughly were that when you were doing the angel investing?
I mean, I think I wrote my first check into a startup around the year 2000. So
Yeah, so
yeah,
around
maybe,
the dot-com era.
yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe before that. But I would
Okay.
say my first, what I would say, $10,000 check into a business was around that time. So I would say professionally, as an angel investor, I've been investing for uh, yeah, close to 25 years. I've written a few hundred first checks, and I would say today we manage a family office of over 100 investments. We have, we do deal in public shells like a merchant bank. We
Mhm.
are heavily involved in the crypto world as well. And really, I invest on the basis of a frequency of energy and the
Mhm.
idea of being socially conscious. And I know
Mhm.
that sounds strange, but it's an idea of like, I don't want to invest in anything that's going to hurt humans. And I think what becomes very difficult, because I deal with it every day, is when my investors call me and they're like, "Oh my God, these people are making 1,000x return on Pepe," and I'm like, "That's not how it works." And I would tell you, because I was actually talking with one of my first investors today. I think the tough part for a company like ours is we are in every ultra compliant industry out there. And to be able to operate and succeed as a holding company in
Mhm.
multiple ultra compliant industries is never going to be simple. So, if you look at our family office today as a holding company, we're actually only 7 years old as a company that's raised outside money. So we've raised almost $40 million, and my co-founder and I still own, I think, 70% of the business. But at the end of the day, we're still in the beginning stages of this. I tell a lot of people, when you look at a company like Berkshire Hathaway, it took a very long time for them to get to where they are today. So
That's right.
I'm yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very proud of who we are as a business. And obviously we want to provide liquidity to our investors as quickly as possible. But I think people have to really look and know the difference between like a NVIDIA or a Coinbase versus, maybe a crypto exchange where things haven't always been done, as we call it in Hawaii, pono, with
Right.
righteousness.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, and David Rubenson, they all started these businesses in their 40s, and they stuck with it. And that's how you build the overnight 15-year success story. So how did you connect to Y Combinator then? So you were doing angel investing. You're in LA at the time. You had some success. And how did?
So I actually was dealing with a lawyer at Cooley. I was actually driving to Cooley to hire a lawyer that was going to help me with deal structuring. And he said to me, this was like 2008, 2009, and he goes, "Hey David, I have this invite to Y Combinator. Why don't you go check it out?" And then and ended up going and checking it out. I think the first company that I invested in was a company called Gaze Hawk. And like everything in my life, everything is kind of like serendipity or dumb luck. That's the name of our So the name of our company is called Orthogonal Thinker. I like to classify orthogonal as meaning miracles, two axes coming together without any type of, no mathematical formula. And so I didn't even know what Y Combinator was, but I could tell you that going to Y Combinator changed my life. And I would say when you look at the roster of businesses that we've been involved with, like WeFunder or Meadow or Vidyard or Talkable, all of these companies have played a part in where everything that you see today, when you look at WeFunder as the company that wrote the Jobs Act with President Obama, I hate to tell people this, but there would not be ICOs or IDOs without WeFunder. As much as people think that crypto would be where it is today, it wouldn't without Coinbase. It wouldn't without, people like Olaf from Polychain and Vitalik and different people that spun off from Coinbase that created these different technologies. And I think the funny part about technology and YC and all this is very similar to surfing in Hawaii. Whenever you meet like somebody in Hawaii, they'll always tell you, "Oh, I've been surfing Pipeline for 20 years," and and it's a lot of time it's not somebody that's local. We call it like local Kamaina. And I think a lot of times in Silicon Valley and stuff, a lot of people will be like, "Oh yeah, that I was a part of that company, or I was a part of those people, and I did this and this and that." I
Millennials.
think when, yeah, I think when you really look back and you look at, and I could candidly say this because I've been talking about, writing a book about this. When I look back at cannabis and psychedelics, so I'll give you a funny story, and this is totally fine. So we had written the first check into WeFunder, which was the company that started crowdfunding. And then we wrote a check. We were the first check in a company called Meadow, which was the first POS cannabis delivery system, almost like a QuickBooks for cannabis. And they also did distribution of cannabis. So we were at the WeFunder headquarters, and I remember we were using Meadow to deliver us cannabis in 2013, like 2012, 2013. So I think a lot of times when I look back at that type of stuff, and there was another company that we funded which is called it was called Instant Cab, now it's called Ride Cell. They wrote the technologies for things like Uber. Like, I remember the founder of Instant Cab, our job, like driving the Instant Cab with the weed that was delivered to the WeFunder house.
That's
So,
hilarious. The interaction
yeah.
is
And I would say when you look back at like where did the crypto OGs and the whole Burning Man and all of this, it all started in little apartment complexes in San Francisco. And as much as everybody wants to take credit for all of this, there are people that work diligently, very hard, and were very compliant, and really started this for reasons to actually empower the world. And I do believe that's the reason, the Satoshi white paper appeared. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times these businesses and things become, yeah, they go down the wrong direction. And thankfully, because I do believe that the universe has a karmic way of dealing with things, uh, that's why I believe today we're on the precipice for many things like crypto and psychedelics and other things where, hopefully we've gone through the bad behavior for the most part.
learned. If you
Yeah.
could go back in time and mentor coach your younger self, given everything you know now, are there certain pearls of wisdom that you might share with them?
Definitely. I would definitely, I'm going to use a Naval Ravikant saying, I wouldn't take it too seriously. I would definitely, like today, I don't own a car. I don't own any property. All I have are my, holdings in my family office. And I think today, as a person I've gone back to who I was as like a 17, 18-year-old kid that got to LA wanting to get into technology, coming back to what I would call like more of a nomadic lifestyle. Um, I think if you really love what you do and you have and it is your dharma, y- it doesn't matter about making money. You're gonna do it because you love it. And I think that the level of where we are today, and this goes back to what we talked about with like investing in companies in the UAE region. The
Mhm.
reason I love this area is because I meet people from Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Balinese, Thai, and I just love this idea of people from places that maybe can't get to the US and Silicon Valley are able to come somewhere. And God, I met somebody the other day that told me he was a valet, or he was like a beach guy at Jumeirah, and now he like
Mhm.
owns a bunch of real estate and car dealerships in Dubai. And like that's what the American dream
Right.
was at one point. And I think that when I look back at my own father that came in the early 70s, and tell
You're a
you a
son
funny
of an
story,
immigrant. Interesting.
my father came from Iran, and he actually owned a clothing store next to Gigi Hadid's father, who had a Rolls Royce dealership in DC. And I look at my dad, who was a that worked as a dishwasher man. When he came here, he was washing dishes to, today my father is, a multimillionaire. That those stories are what makes me work hard and want to empower other people. And again, money is a frequency of energy, but that's I left the US for that reason, because I felt there was a disconnect to what the American dream was.
And the next American dream is being built in UAE because the US
Yeah,
has closed its borders to a tremendous amount of talent. There was a routine you shared with me, David, around how you look into the mirror every morning. I thought it was a beautiful moment. I shared that with my team. That I think is a great way to conclude our
sure.
discussion, our wonderful
So
discussion. Do you want
so
to?
yeah, so I'm a co-founder in a company called Surya Spa, which is, I would probably say, one of the most famous Ayurvedic clinics in the world right now. We're located in Los Angeles, and we treat a lot of high-profile companies and people on the basis of Ayurvedic medicine. One of the first things they teach you in Ayurveda is to look in the eyes. If you look at a lot of, if you talk, if you talk to a lot of people in different cultures, they always talk about like when you look at a fish to see if a fish is like is sick or not sick, you always look at the eyes if they're clear or not. And a lot of like Ayurvedic medicine talks about the eyes. They also talk about the pulse and also the tongue. So when I get up in the morning, I look myself in the eyes, I stick out my tongue, and I look at myself, and I yeah I'm I love this saying by Professor Feynman. It says, don't don't fool yourself because you're the easiest person to fool. And I sort of like sit in the mirror and I repeat that, and I really I look at my pupils, I look at my tongue, I feel my pulse, and I make sure that my I am authentic to who I am. And that is very important to me. And again, we all have our different rituals. And I think it's just important, if I were to give one message to people these days, is be authentic with yourself. Don't don't go through life trying to be something you're not, and then at the end of it want to go back to what you were. And that was my journal entry today that I wrote. Happy to share it with you, but it was in that frame of mind of, I always hear on your dying day, especially we treat a lot of very sick people. On your dying day, you'll give anything for another day. You'll give anything to go back to who you were as a child. So there's no reason to change yourself. Be authentic to who you are.
Right. Right. It's been a theme throughout the conversation. The worst enemy is yourself, and self-deception is the root of a collapse in integrity. And no, I agree. What I took away from your ritual is that you're holding yourself accountable to yourself, number one.
Always.
And number two is you're forgiving yourself, because we're all imperfect. We all make mistakes. We aspire to a higher version of ourselves, and that's called growth. That we aspire to excellence. We aspire to a noble ideal that is perpetually out of reach, but we're grasping closer and closer, and hopefully getting one step forward each day.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, so much for your time here. I love it.
I'm super grateful. I would tell you that very emotional conversation, as it brought back a lot of just deep emotional connection to why I do what I do. And it's not always easy, because I really, again, just quoting my co-founder, how you do anything is how you do everything.
1,000%, 1,000%. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.